Now, I want to talk about concept value life cycle. But actually, you heard about product life cycle. And what is product life cycle? Product life cycle is a widely known concept, especially in marketing, right? So the product follows a certain cycle. And then it says that the product usually go through multiple stages. First, it is introduction stage, and then it will grow fast, so growth stage, and then it is mature, so maturity stage, and finally it may decline. So that's product life cycle. You probably learn about product life cycle. And now I want to talk about value life cycle. Value life cycle actually is integration of new product innovation and supply chain management. Traditionally, I think that supply chain management is closely related with product life cycle. In other words, supply chain management is about how to prepare for this growth. In other words, the company should prepare for mass production, and as the product reaches maturity and declining, probably efficiency becomes more important, and therefore the company has to design its whole supply chain in a way to make sure that the company can make those products in a most efficient way, in a most cost-saving way, and so on and so forth. So I think that traditionally, supply chain management is very closely related with the product life cycle, and how to manage this product life cycle in an efficient way, that's an important issue in supply chain management. What about this new product development, the new product innovation? Well, first of all, new product innovation is very important if the company wants to have sustainable competitive advantage. Where does the competitive advantage come from? Only when the company has certain products and services that are valued by customers more than those produced by the company's competitors. So without developing new products on a continuous basis, the company cannot sustain its competitive advantage in the long run. We can think about many examples in the real world. We know that there are some companies that were enjoying high profit and high market share, but suddenly those companies just disappeared from the market. When something like that happens, usually that's because the company failed to develop the next generation product. So developing new product on a continuous basis, in other words, the new product innovation itself, is a very important condition for the firm's competitive advantage in a sustainable manner. So I would say that the new product innovation is essential condition for sustainable competitive advantage. But very unfortunately, although there are many areas in business, new product development was not well studied by, particular business function. Sometimes folks in marketing studied new product development, or sometimes people in operations management look at the issues of new product development. So somehow it was treated as a separate issue, and maybe the research was done in a little bit informal way or haphazard way. And as I already told you, supply chain management traditionally focused on existing products and services, and it is related with product life cycle. So basically, these two areas, although they looked very much related with each other, unfortunately, these two areas were studied separately. At least, not in a thoroughly formal way. In other words, these two subjects, sometimes, some researchers look at these two issues, but not in a formal way. But anyway, that was the reality. New product innovation was one thing, and supply chain management was another. But the thing is that we now should integrate these two topics, these two, approaches, or these two subjects together in order to create value in a real sense. So that's the concept of integration of new product innovation and supply chain management. By doing so, what I want to do is I want to look at the entire cycle from new product development to the end of product life cycle. So firm or the company must understand the value life cycle, including new product innovation and supply chain management, if it really wants to achieve competitive advantage in the global market, especially on a sustainable basis. Look at this one. As I said, product life cycle starts with new product introduction. In other words, this is an introduction stage. And then growth follows, and then maturity, and eventually it might decline. So when the new product is transferred from R&D environment or development environment to manufacturing or implementation environment, we call that as initial transfer or initial transition. So usually pilot production is done, and then there is some fine tuning before ramp up production or large quantity, okay, mass production. After that, following the product life cycle, there is going to be ongoing production activities. So this is product life cycle, and more traditional supply chain management was focused on this product life cycle. How we can design this whole supply network, how we can identify suppliers so that we can enjoy this economies of scale, or we can enjoy efficiency when our product reaches this maturity and decline stage. But think about this, introduction period. Introduction period starts when new product is actually developed, or the new product is done, or new product development is completed. Then if we go a little further back in this whole timeline, in other words, if we want to have a new product developed for this introduction stage for product life cycle, that means that there gotta be some steps, or there gotta be some stages through which the new product is actually conceived and designed and developed and tested and so on and so forth. In other words, we have to look at the life before the starting of product life cycle. And then we can think about, at the very beginning, probably there was concept development, maybe voice of customers. The marketing function heard about the voice of customers and try to actively identify voice of customers. That's concept development. And then once the concept is developed, then there are some processes. Maybe all these functions get involved, and then eventually they develop a new product. And this is an example of the patterns in terms of a number of alternatives. In other words, at the very beginning, there are multiple concepts available, and as time goes on, probably more alternatives were found. But as we approach the starting point of a product life cycle, the number of alternatives will be reduced, and eventually there will be only one final prototype or one final type of product that must be transferred to the introduction stage of a product life cycle. And then we start. Nowadays, what is important is not just managing this product life cycle without paying attention to how we developed the new product. That's kind of risky. And because nowadays we have to also think about design for manufacturability. What does that mean? When we develop the concept of the product, or when we design the product itself, at that time we already must think about what's going to happen in our product life cycle. In other words, when we design our product, we already think about what kind of suppliers we use, what kind of distribution channels we use, and what kind of customers we're going to target at. In other words, when we design this new product, we already have to think about what are the supply chain management factors, how we should design this product so as to be very effective in later stage. In other words, when we actually manage the product life cycle, how can we make sure that we manage it, we coordinate all these functions and activities very efficiently and also very effectively. In order to do that, we have to design the product with thinking about that issues already. And therefore, for the firm to have sustainable competitive advantage, it must pay attention to not only product life cycle itself, but also on new product innovation, new product development as well. So in this course, when we think about supply chain management issues, we want to look at new product development issues at the same time. In sum, or in effect, we want to look at this entire cycle encompassing new product development cycle and product life cycle. So when we look at this entire cycle from the concept development of a new product to the decline of or to the end of a product life cycle, we call that as value life cycle, which I believe is going to be a very important concept in our course, supply chain management.